I would not be surprised if you have never seen this rifle before because it is very easy to miss. It is the M1941, otherwise known as the Johnson rifle, and there is a very good reason why you may have never seen this, and that is because of this guy here, which is very hard to miss, the M1 Garand. And we'll talk a little bit about what makes these two similar and what makes them different, but for now, we're just going to start off with a few more shots through the Johnson rifle. So what happened there? Get that last round in off the stripper clip. See if we can hit some more targets. Awesome. Excellent shots. So as the name would suggest, this was up for adoption in the year 1941. And the reason that it did not become more popular in the U.S. military or other militaries, it was originally designed in the U.S. by Melvin Johnson, but unfortunately edged out by the M1 Garand. Now, I say that the actual set of circumstances was that the M1 Garand was designed by John C. Garand in the late 1920s and was adopted in the 30s, whereas the Johnson rifle designed by Melvin Johnson was designed in the 30s and adopted potentially in the 40s when they went head-to-head with the Garand, which was already seeing a lot of service. So unfortunately, the Johnson rifle just came a little bit too late, 10 years too late, in fact, and as a result, the M1 Garand getting full widespread adoption and being produced in greater numbers. I mean, the Johnson rifle, as cool as it is, only managed to be created in about 70,000 units, whereas the M1 Garand closer to 5.5 million being produced over the course of its lifespan within the U.S. Armed Services. So a lot more of these guys available. So let's go ahead and talk about what makes them similar. Number one, they fire the exact same cartridge, the 30-06 round, the 30 caliber round. And the reason it's called 30-06 is because it's 30 caliber, so that's the .30 part, and the .06 is 1906. So in case you were ever wondering what that name has to do with, the .0 means 0 and then 6 means 6, so it's .30-06. So it's the 30 caliber from 1906. So they fire the exact same round. Now, the way that you insert those rounds is significantly different. In the Garand, you will notice that you have to pull the action back and you have this 8-round end block clip, which is extraordinarily iconic. It is something that you guys will have seen over and over if you've played any first-person shooters. You just throw that guy in, you allow the action to slide forward, and you are ready to rock. So you have your 8 rounds. And then finally... Oh my God! Did you see that? The clip obviously shot out and then went straight back into the gun. I didn't know that was possible. Wow, I am chuffed. That is insane. Well, as I was trying to say, you shoot your 8 rounds and then the clip ejects itself and then you have to go in for a reload. Oh my God, that was insanity. Oh, okay, so moving into the Johnson rifle, you instead are feeding from these 5-round stripper clips, which are much more conventional. You are then loading them in from the side and into a 10-round rotary magazine, which is why it has this unusual bulbous shape. They actually kind of curl up. So you're going to put it in the side. Now, in real life, you would actually be pushing them in, and this little gate right there would drop forward. You can see it doing so right there immediately. And then with 5 in, you can go ahead and load in another 5 for 10 total. So you now have 10 rounds, 2 more than the M1 Garand. Let's try and do some speed fire. I'm going to go just hip fire, try and give you a better look at the gun. Now, actually, let's look at the other side so that you guys can see the action. Very difficult to aim. I really wish I could throw a laser on this guy. But when you're not using the sights, things are significantly more difficult. So apparently that was 10 rounds. Now, the benefit that you have with the Johnson rifle and the way that this is loaded is that you don't have to be stuck with just 8 rounds at a time. So on this guy, you have the option of loading in the 10 rounds. And then if you're going to go through 5, you can then load in another full stripper clip. 10 rounds. Now, if you have a non-multiple of 5, you can actually proceed by loading these one by one. You can just push these in past that loading gate, which would drop, and you can just put them in one by one. And I already lost count. That's probably the last one. There we go. So there are 10 rounds, actually probably 11 because we've got one in the chamber. So another advantage right here. You've got 10 in the magazine and then 1 in the chamber. We should have 11 rounds right here. Let's try and light up that cardboard cutout of a hot dog. Excellent. And then you see the action locking backwards. That doesn't do a whole lot for you except just notify you that it is empty, and you'll have to put them in. Unfortunately, there's no bolt release, so you have to do the slingshot method. Just pull it back a little bit, let it ride forward, and you're ready to go. Yeah, you can see hip fire in real life doesn't work out. So whereas on the M1 Garand, you are stuck with those 8 rounds. So you actually do have the ability to load in some rounds one by one. And so let's just go over that real quick. Let's say you've got your 8 rounds in there. You have a quick little engagement. It's like, oh no, we've got a hot dog in the bushes. And then you stop and you say, oh, wait, no, okay, never mind. I was mistaken. That was just a bush. So you need to load up. You have 2 options. Number 1, you can try and eject the whole clip itself with the remaining rounds. And the way you do that is you have to rack the bolt. Now, you're going to have that round extract regardless, so that's gone. That's on the ground. You have to go pick that up if you really want it. But then you would then go and press that button on the left side, and the entire end block clip would eject and go flying, and a bunch of bullets would go flying as well, and that is a huge problem. You can see that this is a very simple piece of metal. It's just in a U shape when viewed from this angle, and it is hugging those rounds. So the only thing holding this together is the fact that you have kind of like the spring tension from that U shape and the 8 rounds forming this like quasi-rectangular shape. So if you remove 1 or 2 of those rounds, you don't have that shape, and they'll actually all just be loose and fall out. So it's only really stable when you have it fully loaded like this. So when you're ejecting a clip that is not full like so, that would just go flying out. You don't have that spring tension on the full 8 rounds, and they would just go flying, and that's a problem. Now, your other option is to try and load these individually. What you would do, you would again rack the action, and then you would lose that round, obviously and unfortunately. You can go pick that up and clean it off, but you would have to then push these rounds into the top and use kind of the top of that clip almost as like feed lips on a double stack magazine, but you still have a lot of pressure pushing up on those rounds from the follower in the bottom. So that, combined with the fact that the clip is not really a refined piece of equipment, means that loading this one by one is extremely difficult and just really doesn't even come close to the Johnson rifle. So we've got some more rounds in here. Don't know how many. I'm trying to hit that target out at range. Awesome. Don't know where that clip went. It didn't go back into the gun. That was unbelievable, man. I can't believe that. So let's go back to the Johnson rifle again. Comparing the differences are the 2 different ways of functioning. The Johnson rifle is short recoil operated, which is very similar to most modern handguns, whereas the M1 Garand is gas piston operated. You can see that the Johnson rifle just has that skinny barrel going out towards the end, whereas the M1 Garand has this longer tube there, which is where the gas system, there's a gas port in there, which allows the expanding gases to move into the piston, or move into the tube, which then drives a piston, which then drives the action. So this guy gas operated. Now you do have like a lot of just gas being ejected out the bottom there, and it is an additional set of moving parts. So you could make the argument that the Johnson rifle, because it's short recoil operated and doesn't have that whole gas system to deal with, that it is simpler. But one disadvantage is that because the entire barrel and action have to move back a short distance in order to allow that bullet to escape, you do have to make sure that the weight of the barrel is calibrated for that round, for the functioning, for the action. So putting a bayonet on this thing was a bit of an issue. They had to design a very special bayonet that was very small and lightweight so that the barrel could move backwards quickly, as opposed to having a heavy piece of inertia up there, which would prevent the barrel from moving back quickly and prevent this from cycling effectively. So that was the downside. Now, one thing, I have fired an M1 Garand, and I will say that the wood up front does look very nice, but it doesn't vent heat very effectively. So you do see the porting here on the heat shroud, which I assume is going to be very effective at allowing the barrel to dissipate heat, whereas much of that would get caught and insulated by this wood. I've been shooting M1 Garands and have noticed sometimes, depending on how they're treated, you can actually see oil seeping out if you're going to be shooting them for long periods of time. So that would definitely be an advantage of the skinnier barrel and the setup on the Johnson rifle. So moving on to the sights, a little bit different. You've got a ghost ring on the back for the M1 Garand. Very nice to look through. They both have similar front sights, just that post within the two wings to protect it. On this guy, you have the two knobs, windage and elevation, that would then move that ghost ring up and down. On the Johnson rifle, you have the knob on the right side there, which would allow you to adjust windage, and then you have the ramp style there, which will allow you to adjust elevation. And now, an interesting thing about this is that it's actually in meters. I've seen a lot of these rifles, and they do have it listed in meters, which you would think it would be yards, considering America likes to use the old imperial system and just do its own thing. But it is in meters. Next up, obviously, we talked about the capacities, same 30-06 rounds. Safety's a little bit different, and that's really kind of where the differences end. They're very, very comparable. This was being tested in the 40s against the M1 Garand, but unfortunately, because the Garand came so much sooner, they had already kind of begun adopting it, and as a result, the Johnson did not prevent any opportunities or any advantages that would convince any of the decision makers to move from the Garand to the Johnson rifle. So I've done a lot of talking. Let's go ahead and do some shooting. So let's load in a full clip right there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individually, slingshot, and get shooting, rapid fire. Let's try and take out that hot dog behind the tree. Ooh, that was pretty bad. I think I only hit him once, unfortunately. So Johnson rifle, okay, let's go ahead. We're outside. We've got a target-rich environment. We might as well take advantage of that. Oh, we got that clip sticking out there. No problem, though. I will say that the rudimentary rear sight here with that big flat piece of metal is hard to see around. It kind of reduces the periphery, which I guess would be a disadvantage. I don't know why they would bother making it like that. And that is the end. Cool. So two awesome rifles. I mean, it's a little bit unfortunate that the Johnson rifle did not see more action and did not get produced in larger numbers. It was supposed to go to the East Indies in great number, but the Japanese invaded, and unfortunately that got stopped. So we're just left with this as sort of a relic, an unusual, an awkward firearm, but it is not so because it is a bad rifle. It is definitely not. And I mean, all of the reports that the U.S. Decision makers had done between this and the M1 Garand had stated that they were basically equivalent. And unfortunately, sorry, just too fun to shoot. Unfortunately, I think that even if these had gone head-to-head at the same exact time, there is a solid chance that the M1 Garand would have won for a very unfortunate superficial reason, and that really is just the looks. So it reminds me of the similar situation when the United States was working on a 5th-generation fighter, and they were taking options from Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Lockheed was working on the X-35, which was their experimental prototype, which eventually became the F-35, whereas Boeing was working on the X-32, which was an unusual looking plane. I would advise you to look it up. And apparently those two were not that far apart in terms of functionality, but the Boeing X-32 had this weird little smiley face because of the way that its intake was designed, and as a result, it just looked bloated and kind of just fat, and it didn't look maneuverable or fast. Apparently it was as maneuverable, but it just wasn't as sexy. And so when everything else comes out equal, like you'd have a situation between these two rifles, and you just look at them side by side, you might say, all right, well, I mean, the Johnson, it functions great. It's got this weird bulbous section in the middle. That barrel's really skinny looking, and those porting holes around the barrel are just a little awkward, whereas we've got this Garand. It's got a nice classic rifle shape. It sort of tapers towards the end, and it's got a thick and powerful look because of that extra gas tube, and it's just it is just a better looking rifle. So as a result, it might have just won out if that were to be the case. So let's go ahead and just fire this guy a little bit more. Gotta hear that ping. Awesome. awesome. And now back to the Johnson rifle with its 10 round capacity. Let's see if we can go 10 for 10 on that farther red plate. Whoops, got to keep a hand on that rifle. Ooh, 8 for 10. Not too bad. Well, that's all I've got to say about this rifle and its place in history. Unfortunately, it got upstaged by the M1 Garand, but I think it's still a great rifle in its own right. I've never had the opportunity to fire one of these in real life, but oh man, would I if I had the opportunity, because it is super cool. It's a piece of history, just unfortunately not a military adopted rifle by the US or any other military, so it still is a little bit obscure. So thank you guys for watching this video on the M1941, Melvin Johnson's creation, which was deemed the Johnson rifle. I hope you enjoyed all the information. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up for a like, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, or you just like the channel in general. But that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.